Why tofu and how did your family get started in all of this?
Yeah, and it really started as my mom and dad immigrated here to LA. My parents were originally from Hong Kong, and when they got here in the 70s, it was a big melting pot of all different cultures. LA was a mixed bag of immigrants from Asia. One skill that mom and dad brought was making tofu.
Today we're joined by Vince. Would you give us a small introduction about who you are?
Yeah, Vince Wu here. I'm the CFO of FC Trading and Wholesale. You might know us as Mei Tofu, and we are a family-owned and operated food manufacturer here in Los Angeles. This year sparks our 50th anniversary. Right now, I do sit in the CFO seat, and my brother sits in the CEO seat, and our parents are still actively involved. We distribute to all the Asian grocery stores in Southern California. You'll find some of our products out of state as well, some reaching to Florida, some to Chicago, mock to the Pacific Northwest. So that's kind of my brief history currently.
We definitely invited you because you have such a unique story about your family running the business. And I know you also have a personal story as well. So we'll dive into that in a little bit. But to get us started, just a quick icebreaker question for you, Vince. So you are the tofu guy. If you could only eat one tofu dish for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
One tofu dish. I think it's a simple and classic recipe, just straight mapo tofu. It's just a couple of simple ingredients, black bean sauce, chilies, and whatever ingredients you want to add to it. But that over rice is a comfort food for me. It's very easy to whip up at home. You could put it up really quickly, just dice and cube your tofu and stir fry it or cook it over a wok and put it over rice, and it hits home.
I didn't grow up with it, but my husband is Chinese American, and I know that he craves that once in a while too. He's like, yeah, if I want something comforting, he'll always ask for mapo tofu. Are you the cook at home?
I'm not the best cook in the family, but we do come from a family full of aspiring chefs. My parents actually used to own one of those Hong Kong barbecue restaurants when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
When they were starting off in their business ventures. So dad's a great cook, brother's a great cook. I dabble a lot in barbecues, like July 4th, Memorial Day, Labor Day, all throughout summer. So I would say I'm a decent, but not the greatest. Still working at it.
Okay. So like an American barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a smoker yet.
Yet?
That wouldn't be too hard. It's just, it's kind of like the set it and forget it. But I fear the agony when it doesn't work right and it's over dry. And that 12 hours you just spent goes down the drain. So that agony makes me a little fearful.
I heard that's the whole beauty of the grilling, though, especially for men, to like that practice the patience.
But once it actually turns out perfectly and it's so juicy and delectable, then it's all worth the wait.
Your favorite thing to do is grill meat?
Yeah, it's a little ironic, talking to certain vegan and plant-based folks who prefer that as their diet. It's a little bit of an oxymoron.
But for Asians, like tofu and meat, it's like we eat it together, actually. It's not one or the other. Like even mapo tofu, right? Like it tastes good if there's pork in it.
Yeah, some people, it's a mixed bag. But I also found that in the tofu space, I've learned a lot about the American diet and how they perceive tofu, and more so plant-based foods in the mainstream market too. So I kind of dabble in both markets where, yes, our company and our brand is mainly Chinese and Asian groceries, but being this flexible of a product has kind of shed a lot of light into the American market too.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the cultural identity piece that we'll be diving into as well, right? Being Asian American and trying to introduce like Asian ingredients to the American society and cultures and what that means and how would that look like. And I know that you've explored a lot of that in terms of like that storytelling piece too, when it comes to marketing tofu. And so would you share a little bit about the original story of AFC and why tofu and how did your family get started in all of this?
Yeah, and it really started as my mom and dad immigrated here to LA. My parents were originally from Hong Kong, and When they got here in the 70s, it was a big melting pot of all different cultures. LA was a mixed bag of immigrants from Asia, from Mexico, also new Anglos settling westward, and then also African Americans, Korean Americans. It was a big frontier. One skill that mom and dad brought was making tofu. And even though it was an extremely manual, laborious process, the traditional way, they learned it overseas. And they came here and they saw that food was more of their peace offering to the community. And I mentioned earlier, they had their own little barbecue restaurant too. Part of their gesture to assimilate and be invited into the community here was offering what they knew. And what they knew was more of a skill, but then hours and hours of crafting and grinding your beans and pressing and cooking dishes with it. That was their way of trying to get more involved within the community here. And 50 years later, we're still making tofu.
I'm curious, how did the neighbors receive that? Because back in the 70s, tofu, I'm sure, was not as, it probably was so new to the neighbors that they were trying to serve it to.
Yeah, it's a uplifting story because at that time there was not a lot of Asian immigrants. But over the 5 years, now going into the 80s and going into the 90s, there's more influx of immigrants. So at first it was unwelcome. What is this unusual block of white beans?
Right.
But then as more immigrants came along, Chinatown flourished, the 626 flourished even more. And then there's more like Asian Americans in Orange County. Now the art expansion grew. Then we started going to San Diego from a business standpoint. But it was only then that more immigrants came along the path of settling in Los Angeles, then it became more about receiving. But it was definitely a struggle. I think even until the early 2000s, tofu wasn't really well received amongst general Americans.
Right.
A lot of that has to do with the taste, whereas American diet is a lot more flavorful and a lot more seasoned and dressed. It's a base, and you have to do things with it as an ingredient. Since then, and with popularity in plant-based foods over the past 5 years, tofu's been a lot more welcome.
Yeah. So you've really been on this journey with your parents, watching them try to introduce this brand new thing to the culture. And now you've seen the change of how culture is receiving tofu.
Yeah, and traditionally, if you really think about the product, it used to be in a water pack, and it used to be a brick, and that's how it was usually delivered or sold at the grocery stores. But even now, we as a manufacturer, we do that still, but we have so many different forms and packs and shapes. For example, we make liquid tofu in a 5-gallon pack that are included in salad dressings, which mainstream consumers don't really know. Our form factor is pretty customized, and we make cubed tofu in half-inch sizes or inch sizes, or we can make rectangles vacuum sealed and pressed. So there's just a lot of versatility to our product. But I think that's still a new frontier for a lot of American mainstream chefs on how to utilize it.
Yeah. I found it to be really interesting because I feel like with the American culture, viewing tofu more as like a meat alternative, at first I felt like that was so limiting. And at the same time, when I saw things like tofu jerky or things that I would not find in Asia, because we don't think about making tofu in that fashion, it's like it's actually getting creative because people are thinking of it as a meat alternative as well. Like, what can you do with meat that you could also do with tofu?
Yeah, I think the fast pitch is to really just pigeonhole it as a meat alternative just because it's high protein and it has a denser texture. Even like last weekend, I was making a chocolate mousse made of our soft tofu. It's more of a dessert.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a great dessert.
That sounds amazing. Okay, I'm going to move on just a little bit outside of tofu as a highlighting key talk here into you, actually, your personal journey in your life, right? And I know that you come from a different background. You were an accountant before, and then you switched back into joining the family business. Would you tell us a little bit about that journey and what those decision process looked like for you?
My parents never forced me to become an accountant. It just happened. I just took classes and it just seemed pretty easy for me. I didn't have struggles with it as a lot of folks, but it is a pretty dry and boring topic. I'm not going to lie. It just kind of naturally came easy to me. It's all about organization. It's all about numbers. It's knowing when to pull certain numbers, when not to, or how certain people analyze a certain number from one way or different. My parents never forced me into it. My parents weren't traditional tiger parents where they forced you to become a lawyer, doctor, CPA, whatnot. I just kind of fell into it. Then I went at it from a business angle. And yeah, I did run into the mold of becoming a CPA, yes. But it was not like regret-free. It was enjoyable, I'd say. I had a very different path than most Big Four accountants or EY or KPMG, PwC folks. I went into management consulting. And actually, my parents never forced me to come back to business. They actually persuaded me to stay away for
Really?
5 to 10 years and then
Wow.
choose what you want to do after. Because the easy fallback security blanket, yeah, just roll right into the family business, you'll have a spot. But my parents really said, hey, go learn what else is out there in the world. It gave me a lot of freedom to go explore different career opportunities, which I did. Traveled a ton for work, so I got to see how business was conducted in the Midwest, in the Northeast, and the South, all the way up and down the West Coast, across different industries too. And I eventually did make the decision to come back to my family business. It was a tough decision, but say intrinsic values of why I came back versus financial reasons or any other particular reasons. And my journey was kind of like that. Some folks went straight into the business. I took some time off and made the personal decision.
Wow. That's incredible. I love how your parents seem a lot more open-minded than most traditional Asian, like you mentioned, like tiger parents, right? And so I wonder where that also comes from. Do you know anything about their upbringing or history that might have informed them of their values? Because it does seem a little different than many immigrant families.
And I think it really stems from my dad too, because when he was a kid, he was sent off and my dad grew up in rural China. And somehow, some way, his parents or he found a way to get sent off to remote education. At that time, remote education meant like 2 hours walk away or like
Yeah, yeah,
4 hours walk away. But he was there for 5 months at a time. And I think because he was distant from his family, he was able to be an individual and be independent and go learn a ton of things in the farm, in school, like recreational sports. So I think because he was so liberated, that's funny, liberated within China, he was a lot more flexible because my dad's a go try it, fail and fail hard and get back up kind of guy. So he kind of allowed me to fail at my own opportunities and succeed in my own opportunities.
Amazing.
Surprisingly so, because I think some of my personal choices and my life decisions have kind of revolved around that philosophy. My mom's philosophy is a little bit more conservative, extremely risk averse. So yeah, different philosophies, but it's everlasting in how I've gone through my life so far.
Yeah. I'm wondering, with the same parents, when we have siblings, it feels like they grew up in a different world, or it's as if they had different parents altogether sometimes. So I'm curious to hear about you and your brother's relationship and what kind of characteristics he carries in comparison to yours with the same parents and the values that you grew up with.
Yeah, my brother's 7 years older than I am. So by the time I was born, he was 7, 8 years old. And at that time, probably already developed certain maturity. And I think 7 years old, you're in the second grade, third grade or whatnot. So he basically got a new pet. And that's probably how he saw me. He was like, oh, what's this little thing running around now? But we never, surprisingly, maybe we've gotten into like one fight in our entire lives.
Wow.
Because of that, I always saw him as my protector or my shield, because
Mhm.
a lot of times certain things I've messed up on, he's taking the blame for it from parents.
Wow.
Certain things he's secrets and all that stuff. So it's brotherly love. And that it also translates how we operate on the daily too. There's not a lot of animosity. There's actually just good communication. Although we have very different personalities. Like you said, we are two brothers, but we grew up in the same household, but have different angles of life.
No, I feel like sometimes when we hear about different sibling dynamics, if there's a bigger age gap between the siblings, it seems that they don't fight as much. And
Yeah.
perhaps it's because the older sibling is just so much older that you can't really fight with them the
Yeah.
same way.
I was tiny until I started growing in high school and college, and we were both of similar statutes.
But then by then, like your brother's already an adult, when you're a teen. And so I imagine that there's not much to actually like fight about either.
Yeah. We never shared like the similar group of friends or even shared any
Mm.
clothes. My style is very different from his style. So we don't have a lot of overlap. Therefore, there's not a
Uh,
lot of competition. We're kind of just in our own little hemisphere of life, but we
yeah,
would be
yeah.
in the same house.
So you didn't have to deal with like the hand-me-downs as the younger brother?
I did some of his hand-me-downs. I was also a lot chunkier back then, and I couldn't fit into his skinnier clothes, so not a lot fit.
Ah, so that's another thing that kind of kept things separate because that's a lot of the complaints from the younger siblings. I couldn't have anything new growing up because I have an older sibling. Tell me about, you said his personality is really different than yours. And so what are the functions of your roles in the business as a family business?
My primary responsibilities are naturally in the financial world, so
Hmm.
finance, accounting, treasury. I'm also overseeing our general office too, which includes HR, legal, and compliance. So all those departments kind of revolve around rigidity. It's all about organization. He oversees more of the fun side of the world. He gets to dabble in sales. He gets to play with marketing, budgets and campaigns and colors and schemes. And
Creative work.
so any ideas that come to his idealistic mind, he
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
to play around and make it into fruition.
Mm.
So that's the world he oversees at our company. But we have to work in tandem, because
Mhm.
if he will just isolates himself and works, these complementary departments can't support him, and vice
Right,
versa.
right. So, what does communication look like with you and your brother and your parents too, given that this is a family business?
Yeah, communication for us, I have found that we also grew up in a family full of boys. So there's me and my brother, there's my dad's a strong alpha personality. My two nephews and my brother's two boys are also strong alpha personalities.
Oh,
Um,
two nephews too.
so there's a lot of testosterone running around.
Yeah.
And in a manufacturing setting, right? There's no time to, let's say, dilly dally. So communication is very straightforward. Actually,
Mm,
it's almost too straightforward, and sometimes too straightforward is, there's goods and there's also bads. But I prefer, because I'm a straight shooter myself, I prefer open, honest, and straight communication versus passive or even non-communication at all. So communication, I would say it's overly communicative. I would say in our family, we talk a lot, and we talk about work a lot, not gonna lie, and it might be excessive to a certain extent.
seems that there's like a shared passion too. Like the business, is this shared passion project between the families. So then you all are able to talk about it over and over. I'm sure sometimes it's exhausting, but other times it's also fueling you too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of camaraderie during the conversations, because when you're in the problem solving mindset and there's a light bulb that clicks on, oh, this might work. Like, and
Mm,
people kind of piggyback off that. Oh, let's explore
yeah.
that idea more. Let's make it more bulletproof. Is it really feasible? Okay, let's do prototypes and testing. Can we scale it from one piece to 4,000 pieces to 20,000 pieces? And those trial and errors, eventually yeah, there are mistakes, but when it does push you through the finish line, the fulfillment that is there at the end of the finish line really makes us excited for the next finish.
So there is absolutely a way where Asian families can run a business in a healthy way, huh?
I've heard from other peers and colleagues and how their dynamics work with their family business. I think my situation is a lot more favoring of how we kind of operate as a business and also as a family. There's certain stories I've heard that are a little heavy or a little passive aggressive and it's not
Yeah.
friendly or even cordial and it ruins relationships.
Mhm.
The worst relationship to ruin is your own families too. So I would say I'm very, very lucky to be in this position I'm in.
And when you say, everyone's up, I am also assuming that there's a lot of accountability because everyone's being direct.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest values that I've learned from my parents is being responsible and accountable. So when you put your name on something or when you send an email, it really means there's weight to it. You
Mhm.
can't just wishy-washy say this, say that, and hope things work and don't put any work behind it. So there's a lot of credibility involved.
What advice would you give to a young Asian American navigating like family expectations and they're in like a family business?
Controlling parents, every family dynamic
Yeah.
with business is different. I would also just, I mean, my approach to even the corporate world of life before my family business was always pretty headstrong. So I took opportunities and actually took opportunities away from other people. Really being headstrong and putting your name and forcing your own accountability towards something. And if it succeeds, great, you're flying with shining stars. But if it fails, it's okay because at least you took the chance. You were able to take those risks. I guess what I'm saying is try everything. And if you're, say, certain parents may not want you to try out this marketing campaign, well,
It's
do a
okay anyway.
micro, like test it out. Just don't
Yeah.
take their word for it. You got to see it for yourself. You have to find results for yourself, and don't be afraid just because they said,
Yeah. I'm just like hearing in my head as you're saying this, like, try anyways.
"Yeah, try it."
Just try anyways. I think that goes along with the last question I have for you is what does success mean to you at this stage of life? I know you've talked a lot about trying and being okay with failing. So opposite of failure for a lot of Asian folks is defining what success looks like for them. What does that look like for you in this stage of life?
I think success is defined for me that I'm not. A lot of folks feel that their job is a burden to their day. So they wake up, oh man, I got to go to work. Oh man, I
Mm,
got to go through this 25, 30-minute commute. All my coworkers, I don't get along. Or my boss, like, I don't have that. I actually enjoy working. And if I enjoy through that, whether it's because of problem solving. So for me, success is finding a good position in your own life that you enjoy with. Yes, I might work a lot of hours and I might think about work a lot, but I kind of see it as a game, right? Like some people play Call of Duty, some people play online games or play with their phones. My game is work. So
mm.
I think I found a good position for myself where I'm not dreading work. Work is actually enjoyable for me and it's a little bit entertaining.
Wow, I love that.
If I work,
I love it. All right. So, in closing, what's next for AFC for the next 50 years? Because you all are celebrating 50 years. So, in 50 years, what would AFC be celebrating?
well, this year we are launching our soy milk and various flavors of soy pudding in grocery stores. So if you go to your local Asian grocery store, you'll start seeing different sizes, 16 ounce, 32, 64 ounce of soy milk. I think in the future, there's always going to be something to do with our products. There's tofu, there's sheets, there's milk, there's everything.
Yeah.
That's what we think of. But for me, I think the next 50 years, it's really just building this foundation that my parents have set for us. And whether my future kids or whatnot, or my two nephews, or however they want to, if they want to take it on, it, so be it. If they do, if they don't, then I'll find other ways or to navigate it. But it's just enhancing our foundation, all the manufacturing capabilities we currently have, and really spreading our story, our history, my parents' vision when they came here in the 70s. And now, right now, we're a regional manufacturer, and hopefully we'll be more of a national manufacturer.
Well, congratulations on 50 years to you and your family. If, those listeners want to find you, more about your information or AFC, where can they find you?
You can just find us on our social handles, AFC Soy Foods, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. So there's recipes, there's events, news, there's new products, there's cooking demos, all on our social handles. Check it out.
Love it. The cooking demos. Yeah, I've been enjoying the recipes. It's so simple on the Instagram pages.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you would like to say before we end?
I would say family business isn't that hard when you got good people in the mission. But communication is key. Lack of communication could create a lot of what ifs.
So this is the one takeaway for us is communication is key.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Finn.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening for Yellow Chair Collective, the podcast. If you have found any value from the show, please follow us at Yellow Chair Collective on Instagram and go on our website, yellowchaircollective.com, if you would like our services.